Well, welcome to Danny's most beautiful friend, family, and community. It is absolutely unbelievable to be in this room with all of you. What an unbelievable energy and spirit that's here today. I can just imagine the massive smile on Danny's face as he looked around the room and saw all of us here today. As Danny might say, this is really, really, really cool. I'm gonna maybe try and take this out. I can do it, I think. Oh. That's okay, I'll stay right here.
It's a little bit more good now, is that?
Perfect. This is much better. This magical community meant everything to Danny. This was how he did it, how he became the remarkable person we know, and how he transformed all of us and transformed this world in his way too. So before we begin today, and before I disassemble everything that's up here, I thought we could just take a moment to close our eyes or keep our eyes wide open or do whatever moves you right now in the moment, and just soak in this incredible Danny creation, this community, this wisdom, this unbelievable gift, this awesome world of love. Awesome. I think I have a pretty amazing view from here, and it is just so sweet to look around this room. So my name is Suzanne, and I'm a close friend and kindred spirit with Danny, who once drove with Danny to go canoeing in a snowstorm, and we got so lost in deep conversation that we didn't realize we ran out of gas and slowly grinded to a halt in the middle of the 400 highway. I am somehow the person that Danny asked to drive us along and move us through today. So this will no doubt be an adventure. And I'm so honored to lead us through this adventure. While attention to details like gas and time may not be my forte, I promise to hold Danny's spirit of deep care, curiosity, acceptance, adventure, lightheartedness, and love in our adventure together today, as I have no doubt all of you will too. We certainly have a very full list of incredible people who will be sharing today. And so we will all do our best to keep on time and keep rolling in direction, but have solace in knowing that if we do lose track of time, we will eventually run out of gas. And if we do wander off course or have a moment of being lost or uncomfortable, that is where Danny found some of the greatest humanity, connection, and joy. So put on your adventure hat, and I have Danny's right here. So put on your adventure hat, buckle up your life jacket, or tie a figure 8 on your climbing harness. Here we go. Now, of course, Danny is not one to miss out on an adventure, no matter the professional advice, physical challenges, or time-space realities. And so it is, of course, that Danny has found a way to be part of this adventure with us together today too. Danny, in his most meticulous way of caring for all of us, made a series of recordings for his friends and family where he expressed what we all meant and what it all meant to him. As I sat down to shape this journey, I listened to some of Danny's recordings, and so it is together that we found the words and direction today. His recordings set the tone, a deep focus and commitment to expressing love. But when we can't find the words, or pick the wrong one, who cares? Or and a good laugh, because that is the fine balance. And thank goodness for Danny's help today. I had been feeling a bit overwhelmed by this task. I felt like crying just like that. But together, with Danny's help, it was possible and special. Like on so many occasions, Danny showed up to be with me so that I was not alone. With me as I walked through a hard moment, a beautiful moment, a meaningful moment, an ending, a celebration, together in the big moments and big conversations of life. Onwards now to our first segment of the journey. I welcome Robin and James, who will give the eulogy today.
Hi, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Robin Nobleman. I met Danny in early 2011, soon after I moved to Toronto, and quickly fell under that special Danny spell. Over the next few years, Danny became my best friend in Toronto. I'm going to tell you about how Danny became the person that we knew and loved, but first I'm going to tell you a little bit about who Danny was to me. Danny was my woodworking buddy. He was my favorite tone-deaf singer, my canoe and bike adventure companion, the person I trusted to talk through my deepest fears and biggest decisions, the friend who could always calm me down, and the person that I worried about most. His death has left a void that won't be filled, and his life has added so much to mine. The words I'm about to share are not all my own. I had a gold mine of reflections to draw on from the touching and eloquent things that all of you shared in the Danny and Community Facebook group. So thank you for helping me with this impossible task of summing up Danny. Our friend Danny, Daniel Clayton Howard, was born on February 7th, 1983 in Fairview, Alberta, to Jim and Barb. And boy, did he luck out in the parent department. They lived on a market garden farm in the idyllic Peace River Valley, surrounded by Danny's favorite aspen trees, until Danny was 5. Bonnie was born when Danny was 3, and got Danny's approval right away at the hospital. He told Barb, "Pretty nice baby, Mom." Danny and Bonnie spent a lot of time outdoors, racing boats in ditches on the farm. The only point of contention was that sometimes Bonnie would just sit down in the middle of a hike and refuse to get up. Eventually, Bonnie figured out that all of the things her big brother liked to do were actually pretty cool, and they started hiking and climbing together. It won't come as a surprise to anyone that Danny was an active and adventurous kid. Many of his passions started early: canoe trips on the Peace River, climbing up rock faces before he knew rock climbing was a thing, mountain biking, and riding a toboggan standing up. Danny's sense of being in the moment developed early on, too. When his mom asked him around age 10 which he liked better, skiing or hockey, he wisely answered, "When I'm skiing, I like skiing better. And when I'm playing hockey, I like playing hockey better." And Danny never lost that love of adventure. He was fearless and had possibly the world's worst ability to accurately assess risk. There was the epic time he rafted down the Humber River, lost his glasses, and accidentally drank unfiltered river water. The time he climbed into a slot canyon in Utah without a rope and fell 20 feet into the water with the backpack containing both our phones and our food. The time he fell climbing over a cliff in Vietnam and lost his glasses. Are you seeing a theme here? In between adventures, Danny learned responsibility and work ethic early on, helping his parents out around the market garden farm and later in the greenhouse business when they moved next to town. He worked at the greenhouse after school and on weekends from the age of 6 onwards. If Jim and Barb wanted a job done really well, but really slowly, they could count on Danny. These skills and Danny's capacity for hard work were invaluable when he later worked on Paul and José's farm in Quebec in his early 30s. Danny excelled at school as a kid. He made it to the National Science Fair in grade 7 and grade 9 and won the Governor General's Award for the highest mark in his graduating class in grade 12. He decided to study engineering at the University of Alberta, hoping to design BMWs. At Lister Hall student residence at the U of A, Danny met Aaron Donahue, Jessie Whitehead, and Dave Vinesh, who would go on to become his lifelong friends. Danny first impressed them in res by inscribing his doorway and guitar in Lord of the Rings Elven script, with the words, "Not all who wander are lost," which would become a guiding principle in Danny's life in the years to come. His discovery of Engineers Without Borders in 2004 would open up a wider world in which to wander. Danny went to Ghana with EWB as a junior fellow. He became chapter president at U of A, and then became a long-term overseas volunteer in Malawi, where he had a huge impact on the livelihood of the community where he was living by working with them on a cassava. All the EWP people are calling me out right now. Cassava starch processing facility. Midway through his time in Malawi, Danny accepted a leadership position with EWB, and he was excited to keep working in Southern Africa for several more years. Then in late 2007, Danny had his first seizure while climbing Mount Mulanje in Malawi. He flew back to Toronto and was diagnosed with what was at the time a benign brain tumor. After much soul searching, Danny made the difficult decision not to return to Africa and instead to focus on his health. He was no less impactful here at home, orchestrating successful campaigns around fair trade and improving overseas development aid. If you ask anyone in EWB, and many of them are here today, they'll tell you Danny is a legend in the organization, and his legacy continues to this day. After leaving EWB in 2010, Danny designed and installed solar panels at his old friend Dave's solar power company, Skyfire Energy. And with his commitment to alternative energy and his love of climbing on roofs, Danny left a lasting mark. Danny had an innate understanding of the important things in life, brought to the forefront by his health. During a career transition in 2014, he sought out a job that would let him balance time with his family and adventures and having a positive impact. He decided to start his own math tutoring business. He taught himself the math curriculums, and he zipped across the city on his bike to see his students. His students, and many of us here in this room, benefited from Danny's unique ability to help you come up with your own answer to a problem you're having just by asking you the right questions and listening with that trademark intense curiosity to your answers. The very first thing that I noticed when I met Danny was the way he asked questions. He asked questions that wouldn't occur to most people, and he genuinely listened to the responses. Sometimes the questions were serious and opened up Danny's favorite thing in the world, real talk. He had no qualms about raising topics that were often taboo or difficult to talk about, and he led by example. But not all his questions were serious. Danny was the best at simple silliness. His nephew George was a big fan of Uncle Danny's silliness, like dance parties over Skype and conversations entirely in gibberish. If Henry had gotten more time with Uncle Danny, I know he would have had the same connection. Danny's cancer never got in the way of his deep and abiding care for others. Just after his second surgery, the first full sentence that he managed to say with great effort was asking after a friend who was having a tough time in her relationship. And his primary concern when he realized that he had come to the end of the road with treatment, it was to make sure that his parents and his sister were going to be okay through the difficult time that was sure to follow. And that's not to say that Danny didn't have difficult times himself. He struggled with whether it was responsible for him to have a partner. He felt sad watching his friends start families and progress in their careers, things that felt out of reach for him. And he faced the ambiguity of his prognosis and the effect that that had on all of us. But through it all, he persevered with curiosity, with acceptance, and with optimism. He taught us how to live and how to die. They say dying well takes a community, but dying really well creates a community. Danny did just that with the intention and care that he brought to absolutely everything in his life. He has left this community as his legacy. Instead of one Danny, now we have each and every person in this room and watching from afar who has been impacted by Danny in profound and lasting ways. Danny is still with us in the way we live our lives, the way we raise our kids, and the way we love our friends. Thank you, Danny. We love you.
Ooh. Hi, everyone. My name's James. That was quick. I'm part of Danny's flock of friends, like all of you. I first met Danny in 2008. I was working as an intern, lowly intern at Engineers Without Borders, and Danny was my big on a power trip boss. He wasn't on a power trip, he was the nicest guy. And we held on to each other really closely ever since then. It seems really painfully obvious to point out that this is a really terrible, terrible loss to not have Danny. And I think it's also true that in equal measure, it's a real big comfort to be here together with all of you, all the people who loved him throughout his life and walked through all of those seasons of what it meant to be Danny Howard. And I'm grateful that we get to hold each other up in this difficult time. And of course, it's as Danny would have wanted it. It's how he did want it and how he planned it. Loved ones gathered around and laughing and crying and singing and hugging. It was just what he wanted. And I think the only thing that we could do to make him more proud of us is go find a cliff and a body of water and just hurl ourselves off of that at the end. Kyle's going to be leading that expedition later today. His was a life that refuses summation. Really tough to put into words. Instead, it invites us to reflect and to contemplate big questions. I imagine, like many of you, we've wondered what kind of alchemy was at play in making Danny the person that he was. Because he was, of course, an absolute original. About the most genuine article that I have encountered in my time. He was a natural mountain dweller and outdoorsman who was really blissfully trapped in Canada's largest urban center. I mean, he stayed for the friends. He was a disarmingly sweet person. And in a world where we're constantly putting up walls and barriers between us to keep ourselves protected, it was a real draw to see how sweet he was. I remember a few weeks after Danny's third surgery, we were in a room with Dr. Bernstein, who was Danny's famous brain surgeon. And Bernstein was walking towards him to have a look at the incision on Danny's head. Very doctorly thing to do. And Danny springs up out of his seat and grabs Dr. Bernstein and gives him a big bear hug. And looks at him in the eye and tells him how much he's genuinely appreciated the care and thought and attention that he has received. And Dr. Bernstein was a little bewildered. And he hugged Danny, and he hugged him close. And they shared this beautiful, out-of-the-ordinary moment that he was so gifted at creating. And what struck me was I don't think Danny thought it was out of the ordinary at all. It's business as usual. He was, of course, the tallest Howard in history. To Jim's great chagrin. This is something that they brought up so many times to me. I'm like, I know, guys. I've heard. So while that might not seem like it's saying a whole lot, it is. I remember when Danny was in his final sickness, and a few of us were lucky to be gathered close by and to witness the remarkable strength and quality of his mom and dad. And in that moment, Danny's old friend Paul sort of softly said, "Well, it's clear that apples don't fall far from trees." And we kind of nodded. That felt like truth. Danny was also famously strong and wiry. It's the most accurate word I could find. Just a few months ago at our friend Chad's wedding in Los Angeles, Danny participated in a friendly little competition to see who could hang from a wood beam for the longest using just their hands. This is just a few months ago. And everyone who was there had a chance to bet on the top 3 people who would be left hanging. And almost nobody bet on Danny. I think they would have a while ago, but people thought maybe he's not as strong as he was. Of course, Danny took this as a great challenge and with poetic justice, slammed us all down and finished a strong second. He beat a whole bunch of really strong athletes in the course of doing that as well. It wasn't a bunch of slouches. So he was strong, but of course the strongest muscle in Danny's body was his heart. And he was flexing that full time. He was a grown man who insisted on showing his love without shame for the people in his life. And he made it really cool to love that much. When I started to think about this opportunity, I kept coming back to this question of how do you explain that you love somebody? I spent hours with that question in the last few weeks. And I don't think that there's a way that you can do that feeling justice. What I do know is that Danny practiced love on a daily basis and with great care. And he shared as many gifts with us. I thought that it would be fitting today to share a few of those gifts with you. So first, Danny gave us friendship, a gift that was so rewarding that it enveloped all of us with this feeling that when he was with us, we were the only person in the world that mattered. Being his friend was like a magic kind of time. He made you feel secure. Like all your weaknesses of character and your blemishes of personality and whatever else torments you, it just didn't matter. It was like moths to flies. It was like moths to light, pardon me. He had a lot of flies in his life. It was like moths to light when Danny walked into a room. People just wanted to be with that energy, with that person. And he earned that admiration. You know, he's a real good guy, right? And everyone says all these lovely things about him, and he deserved it. He was that good. Always making space to listen to us, making time, turning things on their head with a really penetrating question. He loved his friends, and we loved his love. The second gift that Danny gave us was his tenderness, an innate quality of his that came sharper into focus as his illness progressed. I marveled many times at how he found ways to deepen communication and intimacy, even as he lost some of his ability to speak. The poet Clive James said, "The whole world, if you wait long enough, is full of falling." But Danny wore that falling without prejudice. He made it his friend, and he found ways to prosper. It was a really awesome thing to bear witness to. Just a few days. It's nice to feel it as well, you know. Just a few days before Danny passed away, I was visiting for a few hours, most of which he spent asleep. But as I was saying goodnight to him, his found a little reserve of energy, and his beautiful beaming smile appeared. And I was sitting there on the edge of his bed, and our eyes were locked. And he reached his hand out. He hadn't been moving very much that day. He reached his hand out and he did like this. And he kind of rubbed it. It wasn't a stroke, it was a rub. And he wanted touch. It was like a direct channel to his heart. And he couldn't talk then, right? So it was everything to have that. It was about the clearest thing anyone has ever communicated to me. Just another way to say that I love you. Danny was saying, I love you. And he didn't need words. The third gift was his courage, which he was forced to draw on time and time again, in ways really big and obvious, and in ways small and hidden. It's the one gift that I wish that he hadn't had to draw on so much. For a lot of us, even those who are blessed with good health, it's hard to keep it together, right? Every day, to be good. It takes a lot of effort. But when your life is veering off course in real and dangerous ways, it's a whole other ballgame. You know that saying that when life gives you lemons, you're supposed to make lemonade. Well, I think for most people, it's not obvious that lemonade is the thing we want to make all the time. It's actually quite offensive to us, and we'd rather send them back and ask for something else. And Danny couldn't send those lemons back, and that he found ways to continue to make beautiful and sweet lemonade for so long speaks to his tremendous depth of courage. Because it wasn't easy to choose those things every day, to take a positive light, It took discipline on his part, requiring him to give a whole lot of his energy to an endless number of mostly mundane and small decisions. How to be when you get up out of your bed in the morning. At the same time, of course, there were lots of big and weighty things as well. Robin talked about this, and I'll underscore it as well. In January of 2008, just a few weeks after Danny had his first seizure when he was in Malawi, he wrote to his friends at EWB, "I have long-term goals in life," he said. "I want to have many years of enabling change in me. I want to be a citizen and a friend. I want to have a family. I want to have kids. No doubt I'm going to live life to the fullest, but my life is also not the same anymore. I have a tumor that was only confirmed days ago and that we hope is benign. Sometimes I view these circumstances as a bit of a gift. I've been warned now that I'm not invincible." Danny's courage. So before I go, I wanted to leave you with one more story that I think speaks to Danny so perfectly. This comes from the writer Eduardo Galeano, and he tells about a man who could climb into the sky. And that man talked about what it looked like down on Earth from his vantage point up there. He said, "We're a sea of tiny flames, and each flame shines with its own light, and no two flames are alike. There are still flames, and there are some foolish flames that don't give light or heat. But there are some that blaze with life so fiercely that you can't look at them without blinking. And if you approach, you shine with fire." And that's the way Danny was. For 36 years, he offered nothing but light, and we will love him for always.
More recently, Danny's way of saying "let it be" was "who cares?" He'd be struggling, as I was saying before, with a word or sentence and then say, "who cares?" Blah, 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 blah. But of course, Danny did care. He cared so much. And that's the trick, that's the wisdom that Danny showed me. Saying "who cares" and letting something be, even when, and especially when, you actually care a whole lot. Jessie and Aaron are childhood friends of Danny who have cared a whole lot over a whole lot of years for Danny. Robin asked them to write something to be included in the eulogy, but upon reading it, Robin thought that it would be more fitting if they came up here and had a chance to read it themselves. So Jessie took a red-eye flight and arrived this morning to be here with Aaron, who took the train here from Montreal, which is pretty spectacular. So I'll welcome Jessie and Aaron to come up here and share with us now.
So they said dress like Danny. And so we did. I just wanted, before we kind of dive into it, say hi to Dave out there, because we'd really like it if Dave was up here with us too. We were kind of four. But Dave's hanging out with his family, relaxing like he should be, Dave. So he's in Italy right now.
So as we heard from Robin, not all those who wander are lost was certainly something Danny seemed to live by. But as we would soon come to realize sometimes those who wander are most definitely lost. Not in some metaphorical sense, of course, but literally lost in the wilderness. But maybe that was the point. Get lost with Danny enough times and you might just end up moving in with him. So after a couple of years in the Lister Hall student residence, we all moved into a house together, which alone provides fodder for enough storytelling for hours. This mostly centered around foosball, jamming, spaghetti, and various forms of debauchery. But it's really what we did after that constitutes the crux of our friendship.
And so after that, we kind of grew up and we moved away and got jobs and traveled and mostly ceased to concern ourselves with the finer points of how to get beer out of a shag carpet after a keg party. But now, despite our occasional late night house parties, Danny ensured that we were in the good graces of our neighbors by befriending the 2-year-old and 4-year-old kids. And to the point, and I don't know how this happened, when they would come over and help us clean up after these keg parties. And so they were in there vacuuming away, and we found a picture of this recently. I was like, we got to get this picture of these kids now who would be 20, kind of thing. Anyway, so despite all that sort of growing up, we still managed to hang out every now and again. And Danny had a keen eye for adventure. He could squeeze a bit of fun out of absolutely any situation. And not just any type of fun, but silly fun, extreme fun. The world was Danny's playground, and we were all his toddler pals.
So there's a sandy beach, accessible only by boat, on a lake in the West Kootenays. There's a picnic table on that beach, and previous to our encountering it, it had no doubt been used only for its intended purpose, which would be picnics. So only Danny could take that picnic table and turn it into a game of extreme sitting. So we would stand the picnic table up on its end, one person would climb up top, and then try to remain sitting on the table without touching the ground as they slowly toppled it back over to normal position. So this is actually really hard to do. A really slow, carefully executed teeter, a hard lean back, and then you hold on with everything you've got as you slam back down onto the beaches of Slocan Lake. Add a driftwood log to the mix, and you've got a sort of combination seesaw climbing problem, and another game full of laughter and disaster. So we actually thought of reenacting that here today, but the picnic table in the park across from Danny's was a little too heavy, so I just had to stick with the story.
I think I might break a hip if I tried that now. So many of Danny's games weren't actually achievable. Or at least they seemed that way at first. Danny embraced failures, though, as part of the journey. And from these failures would come the odd, amazing moment when somebody would actually stick the sit, which, of course, is the ultimate achievement in extreme sitting. And then, boy, would we celebrate. And it all seems so surreal looking back. Danny would take us to another world where we were all just these manic toddlers, exploring the world with curiosity and an intense quest for fun and unique experiences.
And so, well, Danny would lead us on these intense kinetic explorations of our physical environment. He also forced us to reflect on how we got there. So one night while we were camped not far from that poor picnic table on Slocan Lake, Danny had an idea, which in fact may have come from some of you who are here today. So we were sitting around the fire, relishing another day of getting literally lost and ascribing metaphorical importance to it. And Danny said, I think we should each tell our life stories. We each get one evening around the fire, and we start from the beginning.
And so, important to remember in this situation that we had known each other for 6 years at this point. We had lived together, we had worked together, we had traveled together. We knew each other pretty well. But Danny wanted to go deeper. And so this evening around the fire would become a tradition on subsequent trips. Our hikes in the Slocan or the Tombstones or in Killarney all had years between us seeing each other. And so Danny made sure that our different paths in life would fully converge and that our trips together weren't just a moment in time, but that would include a full recap on each other's lives.
So the quality of a friend, in many ways, can be defined by the questions they ask about you. And Danny wanted to know absolutely everything. He wanted to understand fully who we were, how we got there, our struggles, our successes, and our relationships with others. And today, these storytelling experiences feel like such an honor, enhanced by the knowledge that Danny gave himself in this way to so many of his friends, and that we are in fact part of something so much bigger than the four of us just mucking about in the backcountry telling stories.
And so whether it's going deep or going goofy, Danny did things with an enthusiasm that was hard to match and maybe even understand. In a trip planning email thread from years ago in which we were trying to make this decision between spending a really long time in a car to drive to this like really unique and awesome place versus having more time to just kind of romp around in the woods, Aaron summarized the argument thusly.
I think the general sentiment is that it's better to spend our time climbing on and over things, under things, hanging from, standing on and jumping from things, lighting things on fire, catching things on hooks, cooking and eating things, and maybe hiking up some things too. You know, good times outdoors doing cool things.
And so that settled the debate and became a guiding principle on our adventures, maybe even usurping not all those who wander are lost. 3 years ago, we did a canoe trip in Killarney, and after several days of paddling, we had planned for a day of sort of land-based adventuring. We set out from camp that morning without any real ambitions apart from climbing, jumping, hanging from, etc.
So that day we summited the highest peak around. And this being Ontario, I think it was probably about 300 meters. But you could see for miles. We admired the massive white pines. We wedged ourselves in this impressive crack in the earth that we found. And we bushwhacked through untold amounts of scrub, following whoever happened to be in the lead with really no direction or destination in mind. And coming down from that peak, we hit the shore of the lake about 1 kilometer from our camp. We were really tired, scratched up, and incredibly thirsty. For some reason, we hadn't really planned to bring water with us.
It's all part of the
explanation.
And so we were too tired to try and follow his logic on that one, and so just trudged the last little bit home. We got back to camp and immediately sort of set out the relaxation schedule. Started sunning ourselves on the sun-warmed earth and eating chocolate and just generally feeling pretty good about what we had accomplished that day. Moments later, Danny arrives, splashing out of the water, and immediately jumps in one of the canoes. He looks at us and says, "I left my backpack on the beach back there." And with that, he paddled off.
And it was starting to get dark as well. So Danny's thirst to explore his physical world was insatiable, and his desire to more intimately know our respective inner worlds and to share his was profound. And he attacked these two endeavors with a sense of silliness and absurdity that made everything feel like an adventure.
And now he's gone. And well, these memories and countless others are some of the most important things that we share and treasure. Far more important, I think, is the way of being in the world that we learned from Danny. Life is good. people are kind and interesting, and there is just a world of wonder out there just waiting for us. Thanks, Danny.
Hopefully I'm in the right spot. My toddler has been rearranging my words, so I think we're good. The next song is a duet by Sophie and Vini. They're going to come up and sing Time After Time. In these lyrics, my mom hears Danny's voice checking in with friends and family, asking how we are doing and letting us know that he's still there to listen, to help, and offer compassion. He's letting us know that he is okay too. In the second half of this song, Jen is going to cue everyone to join in on the chorus, but we'll start off with Sophie and Vini.
If This one's Henry. So we get to sing together again now with Lean On Me. In true Danny style, we need to remember to check in with each other. Let someone close to you know how you are feeling and allow them to help you get through the grief. Please stand up and sing with us.
Good one, I think Danny might say. That's what comes to me. The next part of this journey is a slideshow that's been put together by a variety of Danny's friends. Danny expressed in one of his messages that while he's only 36, he got more than most people out of life. And this is undeniably true. From great outdoor adventures to deep adventures in love, Danny's life was more full of depth and breadth of all varieties than one could imagine. It was because Danny lived with deep intention. He asked himself, as many have shared, he asked himself regularly, what is life for? What do I want to experience? What do I want to contribute? What is most important? And he asked these questions with all of us here, so that as he created purpose, meaning, and value in his life, we all did along with him in our own lives too. Together with Danny, I kind of get just a wee bit more what this strange and special life is all about. Danny got exactly what he wanted from this life and contributed all that he wanted and found most important too. Danny tributes the fullness of his life to the exploration and creation done with his family and community that are here in this room and that are watching near and far. A community to lean on and a community to squeeze the goodness from this life. These pictures that are captured here will surely show that together we could not have squeezed much harder. I'll just...
We want them to go face ourselves. Because there is a few loose rocks.
My third wardrobe change of children. Next, we have another song. It's Rise Again. Robin and Jen are going to do it as a duet. This song, the lyrics kind of talks to that we'll remember Danny with a lot of triggers, such as the likeness in My Two Sons, George and Henry, seeing a group of aspens, which was Danny's favorite tree, or doing a sing-along session when we sing a favorite song of Danny's. Danny will carry on in our memories. Beautiful, guys. Thank you. The next song is also a group song. It was a favorite of Danny's. He often suggested it singing Landslide in a sing-along, and so we want to recreate that memory today. I know many people here have been in those sing-along sessions with him, so please stand up and sing along with us.
we're moving into the last segment of this adventure. So maybe you can imagine that we're just finished the last portage, and you can see the campsite, and we're paddling, and we're nearly there. How you all doing? Feeling it in your heart, feeling it in your body. We're nearly there, and you can imagine that we'll get there, and we'll get to the closing campfire, and there Luke, Ashley, and Jen are gonna share some classic Danny tales.
When Ashley, Luke, and I got together to discuss what we could offer you today, we thought it might be appropriate to coin some new terms for the effect that Danny had on our lives. So these Dannyisms could be expressed in ways such as, I'm having a real Danny Howard moment right now. Or maybe, how very Danny Howard of you to ask a question like that. In so doing, we'll be sharing stories from our experiences with Danny to help you learn how to apply these new terms. It will be easy to remember the things that Danny really excelled at, to uphold the lore, really the legacy of Mr. Danny Howard. But Danny wouldn't have been satisfied with such superlatives. The ambassador of real talk would not have tolerated this kind of behavior on its own. To be sure, Danny was human, just as real as you and I, and the man had, Ashley, what's the professional term for these things?
Teachable moments.
Yeah. So we'll be including those in our stories as well, just to keep things real. So for me, having a Danny Howard moment is showing up to do something, being more than capable of doing it, and trying to do it for the right reasons, but looking nothing like what they expected. I got to know Danny more in a highly bureaucratic institutional environment. I know, perfect for Danny, huh? He worked with me in the government of Canada to analyze innovation in the solar manufacturing sector. And put like that, it's probably hard to imagine what attracted him to the role. But he and I would go on to share many long conversations about the role of government in influencing change and supporting more sustainable energy systems in Canada. And it was something that I learned Danny really cared about. And his insight, working in the field of solar energy and with business in general, really helped shape my own understanding of how things do work and how things could work. He became someone for me with whom I could talk about so many matters of the head and the heart. He helped me decide on my own career directions when I was considering pivoting, in addition to demonstrating how to live more intentionally with those that I love. I try to talk about my work in a way that appears edgy, but let's not mistake, I work for the government and it can be a pretty stuffy place. And Danny being Danny would show up in his plaid shirt and cargo shorts, riding his bike to work, dismounting with his socks in sandals, gracefully flying through the air in front of our office. He wasn't meeting clients in person, so it was okay, but there's generally a uniform for policy wonks, and it's not so functional. I worked near Queen's Park, so anytime there was a protest or a demonstration, they'd lock the building down and security would be out in front in the case that anything happened. And when Danny showed up in his Alberta uniform, the security guard was having none of it, convinced he was just some hippie protester. And Danny tried to tell him that he in fact worked for the government, but of course he didn't quite look the part. So Danny called me, finding the whole thing really funny and delightful, and I think he was proud of himself. And I came downstairs to vouch for him. It's been harder than I thought it would be during these days since Danny died. But as I combed through past emails deciding what to say today, I started remembering the conversations we'd had then. And it gave me so much comfort to realize that I could keep him in my life by continuing to do what we both loved. That in this way I can keep an aspect of him in my life. Life is better with him in it. And it gives an added sense of purpose to know that in addition to mourning a friend, I can keep him close by living more intentionally, professionally and personally. If I can be more competent at that, and try to do it for the right reasons, and have it look nothing like business as usual, I'll have lived my Danny Howard moment, and it'll be a good one.
So for me, living a Danny Howard moment means practicing acceptance. Right around the holidays, Danny held a real talk at his place on Rusholme, and because of his declining abilities, he had just started having a personal support worker come in to help him bathe a few times a week. But he wasn't sulking about it, of course. What he was frustrated with was how long it took him to accept that he would need help bathing from now on. And he asked us for some ideas on how we could just get over it, accept it faster, so he could get on with enjoying the abilities he still had while they lasted. His question got to me in a way like no other question has, that I have thought about it every day since, and it strikes me as just the most profound question that we can ask ourselves. Because, of course, we are all going to be there eventually, where we're losing our own abilities and having to accept that. And even before then, there's always things in life that we don't like, that we can't change. And I don't know about you, but for me, when I'm faced with those things, I accept it by going oh, fine. And then still secretly plotting to take back control. James called that handing back the lemons. Yeah. But not Danny. He was constantly working at accepting his illness, and as we talked about so many times around campfires or overlooking a beautifully peaceful lake, it was his acceptance of death that made him so intentional about how he spent his time and whom he spent it with. As crazy as it sounds, and a little bit ungrateful for my own health, I realize I would walk away from those conversations envious of Danny and his illness for the incredible clarity it gave him. And while he never said this explicitly, I kind of suspect that his acceptance of his illness is also what gave him the freedom to do some spectacularly ridiculous things. Because, yes, Danny held an incredible amount of wisdom, but let us not forget he was also the scoundrel who dove headfirst into the back of my convertible while I was driving up Yonge Street, predictably landing headfirst in the back seat with his legs hanging over the side and over the sidewalk. Or how about the time that he pushed his canoe offshore, hoping to sleep the night under the stars on the lake. You guys know where this is going, yeah. And he capsized his canoe, soaking all of his sleeping gear, most of his clothing. Yeah. He just never seemed to worry too much that his adventures might not work out. Because I know to him the great joy of the experience, well, it was always worth the risk of ending up soaking. It's fitting that Danny so carefully planned and guided us on so many canoe trips, because I feel like in so many ways he is and has guided me on a profound journey of accepting that death is a part of life. So if I can accept things the way they are so deeply that I help others do the same, then I will have lived my Danny Howard moment, and it'll be a good one.
For me, having a Danny Howard moment is getting carried away with adventure, but having a complicated sense of direction. I've had a lot of stories on this point, but here's one more. Many of us have experienced a Danny Howard moment when canoeing or camping. One trip that we went on was up to Temagami, which is near Sudbury. And this is a trip that Danny had done before, so he knew the route, supposedly. And on our first portage, we got out of our canoes and we loaded ourselves up with our gear. And of course, Danny loaded himself up with about 8 bags and a canoe because he was strong like an ox, a small ox. And he took off down the trail. And it was only supposed to be a short trail, just a couple 100 meters, and it was only supposed to take us maybe 5, maybe 10 minutes. And we walked, 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 and we walked some more, and Danny wouldn't stop. We never found the end, but that didn't stop Danny from trying. He ran off into the distance with his bags bobbing and the canoe swaying on his head. And he was gone for a long time. He was probably gone a good 20 to 30 minutes. The rest of us kind of gave up and just said, what are we going to do? But not Danny. He came back eventually. There was no water that way. So we went back to the water, we knew where it was, and loaded up our canoes, had to cross the lake, and then we found the right portage. Now, Danny didn't let things stop him, including being totally lost. But the yin to his exuberant yang was his thoughtfulness. There's another trip we did up the French River where Danny led us to a tiny island in Georgian Bay that we shared with a small bear. That's a side story. But the paddling was brutal. It was just a really windy day. It was very, very challenging. It was my first canoe trip with my partner. It will probably be the last canoe trip with my partner. We're still together, but we're not canoeing. And after that, Danny sent me the following email. Hi, Luke. I've recognized a disrespectful pattern of mine in recent canoeing trips, including the one we just went on together. I've been pretty focused on my own desires, way too far ahead of others. On the French River, in my personal desire to get out to Georgian Bay, I did a poor job of consulting with you and Sonora and the entire group at stages along that toiling paddle, checking in on energy levels and desires for the day. I'm also reminded of Temagami last year when I took us on the wrong portage and just kept going forever rather than coming back to tell everyone that I was lost. So you could decide to hang out if you wanted rather than lugging a canoe behind me. This is a commitment to respecting my fellow paddlers much more. Thanks for listening. It was really nice to canoe and play with bears with you. So that is also what pulling a Danny Howard meant to me. Getting carried away with adventure, but course correcting, not physically, but emotionally with his friends. So we've already heard how meticulous Danny was. He built everything really, really well, and this included his friendships. Danny didn't need to apologize to me. I didn't expect it. But to Danny, building a strong friendship was like setting up the perfect tarp or tying the perfect knot. He was constantly trying to be better, to make things strong and lasting. The people we lose are never really gone because they've changed who we are. They're always with us in how we think, how we act, and how we experience the world. I will live my Danny Howard moments by running free, but thoughtfully. He also taught me to be open with my thoughts, my hopes, and my fears. Danny was the opposite of toxic masculinity. I love him. We all do. Every moment with Danny was so good. I miss him so much.
All three of us are parents, or soon to be parents, and we wanted to take just a minute to say something directly to you, Jim and Bart, and also to Bonnie. As Paul Slump said, apples don't fall far from trees, and one of the gifts Danny gave us is this opportunity to build relationships with each other and his whole family in a way that other opportunities like weddings and births of children wouldn't have managed the same way. We've all been in awe at how well he lived his life and how much better our lives are with him continuing to be a part of it, and tangibly, not just sentimentally. I had a chance to talk with Danny about his relationships with the three of you before he lost his speech. And while he was struggling to string together complex ranges of emotions and experiences, what was clear was that many of the experiences growing up with you, like the ski trips and the science fairs, and things that might have seemed just routine at the time, really became foundational to who he would become. And that would give him so much strength and acceptance and love later in life. Those moments really stuck with him. Speaking as a parent who understands the deliberations you can have in your own mind about whether you're doing the right thing with your children, or other times when maybe you thought you weren't paying enough attention, you did well. Everyone would have understood if you wanted to share more of these moments with Danny more intimately, especially in this last year. But you embrace community in the same way he did. And we want you to know that we realize that took a lot of effort on your parts. You welcomed the community in, and thank you. Really, thank you for everything. For the beautiful man you raised, and for the family you've welcomed us all into.
We love you, Luke, Jen, and Ashley. And Luke, and Jen, and Ashley. And everyone here. We love you. I wish I had a glass of water that I could pour on myself and then pour on all of you. So, if anyone has one. So it's nearly time. We're moving into the closing song, and just like the end of any good adventure, I'll share some reflections on the journey. When Danny and I would go for Ethiopian beans for nourishment each Wednesday, we would share the most important thing on our mind. The most important thing for Danny was, number one, that his parents would be okay, and number two, that all of his friends and those he loved deeply would also be okay. Danny intentionally weaved this community together so that we could lean on each other and care for each other, and here we are. Real talks and potlucks were just some of his tools. I have felt this community more than ever in the past few days and feel its immense power of healing and support. I think we all did. I think we all do. You did it, Danny. And I do hope we can take some moments and just let it all soak in. Just the power of this room is pretty spectacular. Danny made a list of all his people and reflected in one of his messages, in one of the messages that he recorded. It is incredible that I have all of these people in my house. He meant life, but house was also somewhat accurate. For anyone who knows the Rush Home vibe. And as Jen was talking about, he and his family have brought us into their homes. They have come into ours, and now we are a big family community. So this is it. This is how we do it. This is how we create a community and a world of love where everything is possible and everything is rich and everything can be okay no matter what the journey brings. So much of Danny's work was somehow to build this community of love. And we got to watch it happen, help it happen, and be a part of the creation so that we can't help but keep it rolling. What an awesome, awesome legacy, as Robin mentioned. This celebration of life has truly been a unique community creation and has given us an opportunity to use our community muscles and wisdom. Danny knows what he is doing. Thank you to all the ways that all of you made this happen, and will continue to make this happen, no doubt. Mel just might be the master of community logistics, and she has asked that we all utilize the reusable dishes first, and when we head to the reception for eating. Sophie is hosting a grief singing circle and real talk tomorrow, as was mentioned, and myself and Banu are following it up with an outdoor adventure of some kind. So if you're interested in any of these events tomorrow, you can put your name down on the sign-up sheet, which is actually in the front room to the left. So, whether it's in a structured way or more informally, truly all it takes to create this wonderful world of community and love is the classic Danny, how you doing? With genuine curiosity and a wide open heart. As we move into the potluck reception, or wherever the day and days to come take you, I invite you to dive into some real talk, or share boldly the unique way that you show and create love. At the last celebration of life, Danny retold the tale of Dr. Bernstein asking Danny why he is so positive. Is it his parents? And Danny, using the brevity of Dr. Bernstein, said yes. And having gotten to know Danny's parents, I know this to be so true. Danny explained in one of his messages, that there are many ways this kind of hard journey can impact a family. And his parents responded by deepening the love, taking hold of all opportunities for good times, and enhancing meaningful moments and connection. In Danny's words, that is remarkable. Their love is remarkable, the kind that can ripple through a whole community. Let's use up the rest of the gas now, or environmentally friendly fuel source, on this last song. Bonnie will come up soon. She's here somewhere to introduce it. We will end the song with a classic Danny, oh yeah. Maybe Luke can give us an example. Do you have an oh yeah? A Luke oh yeah? Or someone with a Luke oh yeah?
She wants you to do a Danny oh yeah. Show us what oh it's done. Oh yeah.
Well done. Amazing. So we're gonna end. We're gonna end the last song that we'll sing together with that classic Danny. Oh yeah, and anything else that springs to mind and takes you, go for it. And then we're open to reception and just to enjoying each other here. So yeah, after the song, all are welcome to head to the reception and refuel in all the best ways. And we should take the time to refuel and enjoy this potluck, because there are, of course, many more journeys yet to come. More community celebrations. And Danny will no doubt find a way to be there for them too. Thank you so much. We love you.
So we end with singing What a Wonderful World. Among our times of sadness, there's so much good in the world. These lyrics reflect on Danny's sunny disposition and positive attitude. We invite you to stand up and sing along, and at the end join us in Oh Yeah.
For me and you, nothing to myself.
Surprise, that's